So next thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about services, right? So remember, service is something that runs in a background, is always on, and when you start it, and it basically just keeps cranking in there and does something. So let's look at in our case what we have. Actually, we'll look at the life cycle later. But let's look at in our case what we have. So in our case, we have this guy. So we said we want a service that's going to be pulled so often, right? And then it's going to store that data in a database eventually. So far, so good. That's what we want to do. So to do that, we're going to start by creating a service. Okay. So how do you think we create a service? You've never done it, obviously. So what do you think would be the steps? Yeah, file new, and then what do we? So XML and Java, yeah, that's correct. So I mean, you guys are kind of getting it. But in case of a service, we're not really augmenting it with XML. I don't think of, in case of activity, we had a layout for a UI. So here we don't really have anything that comes to mind. So we're gonna start by saying file new. So let me close all this stuff. So we're gonna start by saying file new class, but make sure you do it inside that your package is selected. So new class, and then I'll call it updater service. Right. So make sure this is selected, and make sure that you're typing this. Finish. So far, so good? So, just like before, what do we need to do once we have a class? Exactly. We extend something from the framework, and in the case of activity, it's activity. In case of service, it's service. And then organize import, and then it's gonna say service is a common name, so it's saying whoa, time out, which service? Android service, Bluetooth service, Java security service. What do you think? Yeah, it's gonna be the Android service. So and then it's saying, okay, how it says, this is underlined red. You put the mouse there. It says, okay, you got to implement some methods, and whenever it says you got to implement some methods, pretty much you always say add unimplemented methods. Yeah. So now there's this method on bind, which for now you're gonna ignore for a very long time. We don't care about it. So intent. Yes, so there's something called a binder, which is used for inter-process communication, IPC, which we'll talk about later on. But it's not really. It's something that's really advanced, and you don't really care about it.
Oh, this is service to service.
This is if somebody else wants to bind to this service on an ongoing basis. And it's usually used via AIDL for inter-process communication. So it's another application, another process talking to this process altogether, which is not something we're doing right now. So for now, we're going to ignore this, and we're going to do something else instead, right? So if you look at what we had here on a life cycle of a service, I said, there's on create, on start, and on destroy. Those are the basic three things, right? So we can do. We're gonna do this slowly. So I'm just gonna create these three methods: on create, start, and destroy. I'm just gonna print a little logcat so that I know it happened, and then we're gonna see how that works. So we're gonna do this like in small increments, right? So I'm gonna go source, override implement methods, and then on create, on destroy, and on start. We don't really need on start. If you want, we can take. If you want to keep it simpler, we can take it out. What do you guys want to do?
Let's see. There should be some purpose behind.
Yeah, but we can. So let me. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move it just so it's in chronological order. So it's on create, on start, and then on destroy, right? So I have it like that: on create, on start, on destroy. What were you saying? Sorry. Yeah, there's different. Yeah, there's different methods. They do different things. Just as before, if uncertain, you can always do service, and app service, and that tells you, various things. There are different ways to use a service, but the way we're using it, is one of the simpler ways initially. So on create, on start, and start command on destroy, so that kind of stuff. So anyway, so what we're gonna do is I usually always have that private static final string tag, and is updater service dot class dot get simple name, or simply updater service, right? Same thing. So I usually define that guy all the time, just because I'm assuming I'm going to be logging, especially with things like service, which you can't see. It's very useful to watch them by having them tell you what they're doing, right? Because you can't see them. They're invisible, like electricity, sort of. Okay, so in on create, I'm simply gonna for now say log.d tag comma on created. That tells me that it's at the end of the file. Organize import log, and then I'm gonna do that log.d tag comma on started and log.d on destroyed. So I just basically added that one liner, the little tag, just to say, hey, there's something going on. That's it. So far, so good. So to create a service, you define a service, you subclass system, create a new class, subclass, system class, and then implement some methods. Same as an activity, right? We have a service now. It doesn't do much. It's perfect, right? We want to do this organically, incremental, right? Like create a little gear. It spins. It doesn't do much, but let's see it spin first before we plug in other gears, right? Exactly. So the next step, just like with the activity, is to put it into a manifest file. So all the main building blocks, you got to put them in. Usually you put them in the manifest file. There's an exception to that, but we'll get there later. So I'll open up the manifest file, and I can simply just do it like programmatically. So I can go into my manifest file and can simply do within the application block, I can say service Android name equals dot updater service. And that's it. I'm done. If you want, you can make this shorter. It's not necessary. Same here. You can make this shorter, right? Like that. So see, we have an application. It's got 3 things now. 1 activity, 2nd activity, and 1 service.
So whatever component you add, like on this reference or whatever it is, they all come between this application tag.
Yes. Yes. So all the main building blocks go into the application tag. Yeah. So they're all part of the Yamba application. They all have access to Yamba application, etc. So far, so good? Okay, so now that we have the service defined here, what I want to do is I want to integrate it back into my application. What I mean by that is I'd like to be able to see it start, stop, and that sort of stuff. Constant integration, right? It's another one of the agile principles, right? Constantly integrated back. So how would we integrate it? One simple way that I could do it is we already have the options menu, so we could just easily add two more things to the menu, say start, stop, right? So that would be a good easy way. Okay, so we're going to go back to our menu. So we want to add two more things. So which file was that we defined? The buttons? Yeah, menu.xml, and it's going to be basically the same thing you did yesterday. You're going to add another item, not a group, but item. And I'm going to say item service start. Right, item service start. Create a title for it. For title, I'll create a new string. I'll say string title service start service. Right? Then the hardest thing is going to be finding the image. Which image to use? Which graphic to use? Okay. I'll help you guys out with that. I'll go find it for you while you're doing that, because I like poking around the internet anyway. So I go to that site called Android Drawable.
Isn't there like a start stop in regular Android that you can use? Stop service, start service on regular service.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is, but we got to figure out which image to use. And there's something called that I usually use before, IC Media Play and IC Media Pause. These two. So I use these two icons. Again, it's up to you. You can go crazy with those icons, but they're good enough, right? So I'm going to say here then add for Android column drawable to point to the system resource and then IC Media Play. Right? So this is how I configure, added one button. So far, so good? So,
Mark,
yeah.
what time will be breaking for lunch? Around 12:30?
Yeah, 12:15 for lunch, something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we're and it's good because what we're doing now is going to be small increments, so it's not going to be like one big push to get something out. We're going to grow this organically. Okay, so everyone got this new item, right? You just got to do the same one again, right? Just be careful. One thing I notice people get stuck with Eclipse. See, now I wanna create a new item, and I go click add, bam. It's like, whoa, there's no item, there's a sub menu. That's because contextually I have this selected. So that's, it's like just kind of Eclipse is not very intuitive about that. So make sure you create a new element to the top, and then select item.